The stars had always called to humanity. For centuries, they looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what lay beyond. By the year 2347, those dreams had become reality. Humans had spread to a dozen worlds beyond their home system. They had met other species, joined a galactic community, and believed they had found their place among the stars. They were wrong. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the fleet for 30 years, and he had never seen anything like what filled his view screen now. 2,000 Vekthari warships hung in the darkness of space. They were massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons. They had arrived without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel just beyond Earth's moon. Their formation was perfect, their intent clear. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Vekthari command ship," said Lieutenant Kim Reyes, the communications officer. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see the fear in her eyes. "Put it through," he said. The view screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was not human. The Vekthari were tall beings, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Their mouths were filled with small, sharp teeth. This one wore the ornate armor of a high commander. "Humans," the Vekthari said. His voice was cold and filled with contempt. "You have been given many chances to submit to the Dominion. You have refused. Your world sits at a junction point that we require. Your existence is no longer acceptable. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will remove you from the galaxy." The transmission ended. Morrison looked at his officers. He saw fear on their faces, but he also saw determination. Earth's fleet was small, compared to the Vekthari armada. They had perhaps 200 warships, most of them older models. The math was simple and brutal, but they would fight anyway. "All ships," Morrison said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Morrison. You all heard the message. We know what we face. We know the odds. But that planet behind us is our home. 8 billion people are counting on us to protect them. We will not surrender. We will not run. We will fight for every inch of space, for every second of time. If we fall today, we fall as humans should, standing tall and facing our enemy. All ships, engage." The battle began. Earth's fleet surged forward to meet the Vekthari. Missiles streaked across the void. Energy beams carved through the darkness. Human ships fought with everything they had, weaving and dodging, striking at weak points in the enemy formation. For a brief moment, Morrison allowed himself to hope. Human pilots were skilled, and their tactics were clever. They destroyed dozens of Vekthari ships in the first hour, but it was not enough. It could never be enough. The Vekthari fleet was simply too large. For every enemy ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. Human vessels began to fall, one after another. The Resolute took hit after hit, her shields failing, her hull breaching. Morrison watched as the carrier Endurance exploded in a ball of fire. 3,000 crew members, gone in an instant. He watched as the cruiser Defender was torn apart by concentrated fire. He watched as humanity's hopes died ship by ship. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Earth's fleet was destroyed. On the lunar outpost, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant stood at a window and watched what came next. She was young, only 28 years old. With dark hair and green eyes, she had joined the fleet to explore the stars, to see wonders. Instead, she witnessed horror. The Vekthari did not simply claim victory. They wanted to send a message to the galaxy, a message about what happened to species that defied the Dominion. Massive kinetic bombardment weapons fired from orbit. The projectiles were simple things, just large chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. But their effect was devastating. The first strikes hit the major cities. New York vanished in a flash of light and fire. Tokyo was next. Then London. Then Beijing. The impacts were so powerful that they cracked the Earth itself, sending shockwaves across continents. Lisa watched through her telescope as mushroom clouds rose over every populated region on Earth. She watched as the blue and green world she loved turned black and orange. Choked with ash and fire, she watched as her home died. The bombardment continued for hours. The Vecthari were thorough. They targeted every city, every town, every village. They targeted military bases and civilian centers alike. They did not care about the difference. When it was over, Earth was a tomb. 8 billion human beings had lived on that world when the sun rose that morning. By sunset, almost all of them were dead. Lisa collapsed against the window, tears streaming down her face. Around her, other survivors of the lunar base stared in numb silence. Some wept. Some screamed. Some simply stood frozen, unable to process what they had witnessed. Far from Earth, on a small transport ship fleeing toward the outer colonies, a young officer named Sam Hartley held his sister Megan close. They had been on leave, visiting a mining station when the attack began. That random chance had saved their lives. Through the ship's rear cameras, Sam watched the distant glow of Earth's destruction. He was 25 years old, and he had just lost everything. His parents, his friends, his home, all gone. Megan sobbed against his chest. She was only 19, barely more than a child. Sam stroked her hair and tried to find words of comfort, but there were none. Around them, 3,000 other survivors huddled in the cargo bay. They were the lucky ones, if luck was the right word. They were alive, but they had nothing left. The transport captain's voice came over the speakers. All survivors, this is Captain Rodriguez. We have escaped the combat zone. We are heading for the colony at Kepler 442b. I know you are all in pain. I know you are all scared. But we are alive. And as long as we are alive, there is hope. Sam listened to the words, but he did not feel hope. He felt something else, something cold and hard forming in his chest. It was not hope. It was not despair. It was rage. He looked down at his sister, then back at the fading glow of their murdered world. In that moment, something changed inside him. He made a promise, not just to himself but to every human who had died that day. We will remember this, he whispered. And one day, we will return. They think they have destroyed us. They think we will scatter and fade away. But they are wrong. We will survive. We will grow strong. And when the time comes, we will make them pay for what they have done. Megan looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. How? She asked. How can we possibly fight them? Sam did not have an answer. Not yet. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would spend the rest of his life finding one. The stars watched in cold silence as the refugee ships fled into the darkness. Humanity had been broken, but not destroyed. And in the ashes of Earth, the seeds of vengeance had been planted. The Vecthari believed they had ended a species. They had no idea they had created their greatest enemy. 50 years passed in silence. The galaxy believed humanity was dead. The Vecthari had broadcast the destruction of Earth across every communication channel, making sure every species saw what happened to those who defied the Dominion. It was meant as a warning, and it worked. No one dared to challenge Vecthari rule. The Galactic Council issued a brief statement expressing regret for the loss of the human species. Then they moved on. Humanity became a footnote in history books. A cautionary tale told to children, the young species that reached too far and paid the price. But deep in the forgotten corners of space, far from trade routes and inhabited systems, humanity endured. The survivors had scattered at first, fleeing to distant colonies and hiding wherever they could. They expected the Vecthari to hunt them down and finish the job. But the Dominion did not bother. Humans were primitive, weak, broken. A few thousand refugees posed no threat. They would die on their own soon enough. This was the greatest mistake the Vecthari ever made. Nathan Cole was 30 years old when Earth fell. He had been a minor government official on one of the outer colonies, responsible for supply management and resource allocation. Not an important job, not a heroic job. But when the refugees began arriving, when the scattered survivors needed someone to organize them, Nathan stepped forward. He gathered the remnants of humanity together. He found hidden places where they could live, rogue planets drifting between stars, dead moons in systems no one wanted, asteroid belts too remote to explore. Over 10 years, he built a network of secret outposts, connected by carefully hidden communication lines. They called their new nation the Terran Reclamation Authority. The name was a promise. They would reclaim what had been taken from them. Now Nathan was 80 years old, his hair white, and his face lined with age. But his eyes still burned, with the same fire that had driven him for 5 decades. He sat in his office on Outpost Prime, the largest of the hidden bases, and reviewed the latest reports. 2 million humans now lived under his authority. That number seemed large until you remembered that 8 billion had died. But it was enough. It had to be enough. A knock came at his door. "Come in," he said. Amy Lawson entered. She was the chief engineer of the authority, a brilliant woman in her 50s who had dedicated her life to one goal, giving humanity the weapons it needed to fight back. "We have finished the final tests on the new stealth system," she said. "It works better than we hoped. A ship equipped with this technology can pass within 1,000 kilometers of a Vecthari sensor station without being detected." Nathan nodded slowly. "And the weapons? The harmonic disruptors are ready. We finally cracked the weakness in Vecthari shield technology. One hit from our new torpedoes will collapse their shields completely. After that, they are vulnerable to conventional weapons." This was the fruit of 50 years of work. When the first human survivors had fled Earth, they had nothing. Their technology was crude compared to the Dominion. Their ships were slow, their weapons weak. They had no chance in a straight fight, so they did not fight straight. Human engineers studied every piece of Vectari technology they could capture or steal. They analyzed it, understood it, and then improved upon it. Where the Dominion relied on brute force, bigger ships, more weapons, overwhelming numbers, humans developed precision. They created tools that exploited specific weaknesses, that turned the enemy's strengths into vulnerabilities. It had taken decades, but they were finally ready. In the training halls of Outpost 7, Commander Chris Dalton watched his soldiers practice. They were young men and women, most of them born in exile. Raised on stories of Earth's destruction, they had never seen their homeworld, but they carried its memory in their hearts. Chris was 45 years old and had been training soldiers for 20 years. He had molded these young people into the finest fighting force in the galaxy. They could handle any weapon, pilot any ship, survive in any environment. More importantly, they understood why they fought. This was not about conquest or glory. This was about justice. "Commander," said one of his officers, a young woman named Nina Santos. "The new recruits are showing excellent progress. We will have another 5,000 combat-ready personnel by the end of the month." "Good," Chris said. "We are going to need them." The word had come down from Director Cole himself. Operation Reckoning was moving forward. After 50 years of preparation, humanity was finally going to strike back. In another part of the outpost, Dr. Ben Torres worked in his office, surrounded by screens and data files. He was the head of psychological warfare, a man who had spent his career studying the Vecthari mind. He understood them now. He knew their pride, their arrogance, their absolute certainty that they were the superior species. He knew how they thought, how they would react to different situations, and he had used that knowledge to design a campaign that would not just defeat them militarily but would break their spirit completely. "The key is fear," he explained to his assistants. "The Vecthari have never experienced real fear. They have always been the strongest, the most powerful. They do not know how to handle the feeling of being prey. When we show them that they are vulnerable, when we prove that their strength means nothing against us, they will crumble from the inside." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. First, strike without warning. Show the Vecthari that humans could reach them anywhere, anytime. Then disappear before they could respond. Strike again somewhere else. And again. Each attack would be more devastating than the last. Each attack would spread more fear. By the time the Dominion mobilized for a real counterattack, their people would already be terrified. Their confidence would be shattered. They would make mistakes, act rashly, and play right into human hands. In the council chamber of Outpost Prime, the leaders of the Terran Reclamation Authority gathered for the final briefing. Nathan Cole sat at the head of the table, flanked by his most trusted advisors. Sam Hartley was there, now 75 years old but still sharp and focused. His hair had gone white, and his hands trembled slightly, but his voice was strong. Beside him sat his sister Megan, who commanded the intelligence division. She had spent decades building a network of spies and informants throughout Vekthari space. Our agents report that the Dominion has no idea we exist, Megan said. They truly believe we are extinct. Their patrol patterns have grown lazy. Their defenses are focused outward, against other powers. They are not watching for us. Sam smiled grimly. Good. Let them stay blind until the moment we open their eyes. Nathan Cole looked around the table at the faces of those who had given everything for this moment. Some were old like him, survivors of Earth who had waited half a century for vengeance. Others were young, born in hiding, trained since childhood for the war to come. 50 years ago, our species was nearly destroyed, Nathan said. We lost our home, our families, our world. The galaxy forgot us. The Vekthari dismissed us, but we did not forget. We did not give up. We have worked and planned and prepared, and now the time has come. He pressed a button on the table, and a holographic map of Vekthari space appeared. Operation Reckoning begins in 72 hours. May the memory of Earth guide our hands and steel our hearts. For the fallen. For humanity. Every person at the table repeated the words, for the fallen, for humanity. The long silence was about to end. And when humanity finally spoke again, the galaxy would never forget the sound. The Vekthari colony world of Kethvora was celebrating. 50 years ago to the day, the Dominion had destroyed the human homeworld. It had become a holiday throughout Vekthari space, a reminder of their power and the price of defiance. Parades filled the streets. Fireworks lit the sky. Citizens cheered and sang songs praising the glory of the Dominion. High Commander Vethoran watched the celebrations from his command center with satisfaction. Kethvora was one of the most important worlds in the Dominion, home to 3 billion Vekthari and the headquarters of the Third Fleet. The commander was proud of his world and proud of his people. He had no idea that death was coming. In the darkness above Kethvora, hidden by technology no one in the Dominion knew existed, the human stealth cruiser Phantom waited. Captain Tyler Ross sat in the command chair and studied the planet below through his tactical display. He was a calm man with steady hands and ice in his veins. He had waited his entire life for this moment. All systems ready, reported his executive officer, Lieutenant Kara Webb. The ground teams are standing by. We are in position. Tyler checked the time. 30 seconds until the operation began. He thought about Earth. He had never seen it. He had been born on one of the hidden outposts, raised on stories of a beautiful blue world that no longer existed. His parents had both been refugees, and they had died before the revenge they dreamed of could be realized. But they had raised him to be a weapon, and now that weapon was about to strike. All hands, Tyler said over the ship's intercom. This is the captain. For 50 years, we have hidden in the shadows. For 50 years, we have prepared. For 50 years, we have remembered. Today, we show the Dominion that humanity is not dead. Today, we begin to collect the debt they owe us. May our ancestors guide us. Execute Operation Reckoning. The Phantom decloaked. To the Vekthari sensor operators below, it was as if a ghost had appeared from nowhere. One moment their screens showed empty space. The next moment, a warship hung in low orbit, already firing. The first targets were the orbital defense platforms. Human torpedoes, equipped with the harmonic disruptors Amy Lawson had designed, slammed into them with perfect accuracy. The Vecthory shields collapsed instantly, and the platforms exploded in balls of fire. Before the defenders could react, a second wave of attacks hit the military communication arrays, then the planetary shield generators, then the Fleet Command Center. High Commander Veth Oren watched in disbelief as his entire defense network went dark in less than 3 minutes. "What is happening?" he screamed at his officers. "Who is attacking us?" No one could answer him. The attack was too fast, too precise, too unexpected. By the time they understood what was happening, it was already over. Dropships launched from the Phantom and streaked toward the surface. Major Nicole Chen led the ground assault from the first ship down. She was a small woman with short black hair and hard eyes. She had trained for ground combat since she was 12 years old, and she moved with the deadly grace of a predator. "Remember your targets," she told her soldiers over the tactical channel. "Military installations only. We are not here to murder civilians. We are here to send a message." The human soldiers hit the ground like a thunderstorm. They wore advanced exosuits that made them faster and stronger than any Vecthory warrior. They carried weapons that punched through Dominion armor like paper. They knew the layout of every building, every base, every defensive position thanks to 50 years of careful intelligence gathering. The Vecthory military tried to fight back. They were brave warriors, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Human soldiers seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating force, and vanish before a response could be organized. Squads of Vecthory were eliminated in seconds by attackers they never even saw. At the main garrison, Commander Veth Oren finally got a look at the enemy. He stood at his window and watched as a group of human soldiers advanced through his defenses like they were not even there. One of them stopped and looked up at his window. For a long moment, their eyes met. The human was wearing a helmet that hid their face. But Veth Oren could feel the hatred radiating from them. It was cold and patient, and absolutely merciless. In that moment, he understood something that chilled him to his core. These were not the primitive, weak humans the Dominion had destroyed 50 years ago. These were something else entirely. These were humans reborn in fire and forged in darkness. And they had come for vengeance. 4 hours after the attack began, it ended. Every military installation on Kethvora had been destroyed. Every warship in orbit had been disabled or eliminated. The garrison was in ruins, and High Commander Veth Oren was in human custody. But the civilian population was untouched. Not a single non-military target had been hit. Not a single innocent Vecthory had been harmed. As the human forces prepared to withdraw, Captain Tyler Ross broadcast a message across every channel on the planet. The face that appeared on millions of screens was not his own. It was Commander Chris Dalton, speaking from Outpost Prime. "People of the Vecthory Dominion," Chris said in a calm, cold voice. 50 years ago, your empire murdered our world. You killed 8 billion innocent human beings. You thought you had destroyed us forever. You were wrong. He paused to let the words sink in. We are humanity. We survived. We grew strong in the shadows, while you celebrated our death. And now we have returned. Look at what we have done to Kethvora. Look at how easily we broke your defenses. This is only the beginning. The image shifted to show the destruction of the military bases, the burning warships, the captured commander. Your military will be destroyed. Your empire will fall. But we are not like you. We do not murder the helpless. We do not slaughter civilians. The people of Kethvora are alive because we chose to spare them. Remember that. Remember that we had the power to do to you what you did to us, and we chose mercy. Chris leaned forward, and his eyes seemed to burn through the screen. But do not mistake mercy for weakness. The Dominion will pay for its crimes. Every world that has suffered under your rule will be freed. Every ship that flies your flag will be hunted. We will not stop until the Dominion is nothing but ash and memory. Spread the word to your masters. Tell them that humanity is coming. Tell them that there is nowhere to hide and no force in the galaxy that can save them. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, other species watched in stunned silence. The Aelori, who had been conquered by the Dominion a century ago. The Kassith, who lived under brutal occupation. The Mendari, who had lost millions to Vecthari aggression. All of them had accepted that the Dominion was too powerful to challenge. Now they watched as a species thought to be extinct struck at the heart of their oppressors. They watched as the mighty Vecthari were humiliated by the humans they had tried to destroy. And for the first time in generations, they began to hope. On the bridge of the Phantom, now safely cloaked and speeding away from Kethvora, Captain Tyler Ross allowed himself a small smile. The mission had been a complete success. 0 human casualties, all objectives achieved. "Sir," said Lieutenant Webb, "we are receiving messages from multiple sources. The attack is being reported across the entire galactic network. Everyone knows what happened here." Tyler nodded. "Good. That was the point. Let them all see. Let them all know. The Dominion's days are numbered." He looked out at the stars and thought about all the humans who had worked and sacrificed to make this moment possible. The engineers who built the weapons. The spies who gathered the intelligence. The soldiers who trained for decades. The survivors who refused to give up hope. This was for all of them. And it was only the beginning. The ghost of humanity had returned to haunt the Dominion. And the Vecthari were about to learn the true meaning of fear. The Vecthari Dominion had never known panic. For 3 centuries, they had been the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had crushed every enemy, conquered every rival, dominated every weaker species. Fear was something they inflicted on others, not something they felt themselves. Until now, in the 6 months since the attack on Kethvora, humanity had struck 17 more worlds. Each attack was the same, sudden, devastating, precise. Human forces would appear without warning, destroy every military target, broadcast a message to the galaxy, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Dominion could not stop them. They could not even find them. Human ships seemed to come from nowhere and disappear into nothing. Vecthari commanders were losing sleep, jumping at shadows, seeing threats in every sensor ghost. Overlord Kethvarak, the supreme commander of all Vecthari military forces, had seen enough. He stood before the War Council on the Dominion homeworld and slammed his fist on the table. "This ends now," he declared. "I am mobilizing the Grand Fleet. 15,000 warships. The largest force ever assembled in our history. We will find these human remnants and wipe them from existence once and for all." The council members nodded in approval. This was the answer. Overwhelming force. It was how the Dominion had always solved its problems. What they did not understand was that the humans were counting on exactly this response. Admiral Laura Hayes stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Vengeance, the flagship of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and a face carved from stone. She had been one of the first children born in exile, and she had risen through the ranks by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than anyone around her. Now she commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled, 800 warships, plus countless smaller vessels and support craft. It was nothing compared to the 15,000 ships coming to destroy them. But Laura had something the Vecthari did not have: a plan. "The enemy fleet has entered the Crimson Nebula," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Matt Porter. He was young, but brilliant. The finest electronic warfare specialist humanity had ever produced. "They are following the trail we left for them." "Just as predicted," Laura nodded. For months, they had been dropping hints, leaving clues, creating a trail that would lead the Dominion fleet to a specific location. The Vecthari thought they were hunting humans. In reality, they were walking into a trap. "All ships, hold position," Laura ordered. "Wait for my command." The Crimson Nebula was a vast cloud of gas and dust that stretched across several light years. Its swirling red colors made sensors unreliable and navigation difficult. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Overlord Kethvarak led his fleet into the nebula with confidence. His scouts reported no enemy contacts, no signs of human presence. The trail they had followed seemed to end here, in the middle of nowhere. "Perhaps they have fled," suggested his second-in-command. "Perhaps they know they cannot fight us." Kethvarak shook his head. "No. They are here. I can feel it. All ships. Spread out and search. Find them. The Vekthari fleet spread across a wide area, each ship scanning the nebula for any sign of the enemy. They were so focused on searching that they did not notice the weapon platforms powering up behind them. Human engineers had spent months preparing this killing ground. They had hidden weapons throughout the nebula missile platforms, drone carriers, minefields. All of them were invisible until the moment they activated. Admiral Hayes watched the enemy fleet position itself exactly where she wanted it. Then, she gave the order. All units, execute. The nebula erupted in fire. Missiles streamed from hidden platforms, slamming into Vekthari ships before they could raise shields. Mines detonated in chain reactions that ripped through entire squadrons. Electronic warfare systems scrambled Dominion communications, leaving their fleet blind and deaf. And then the human warships decloaked. 800 vessels appeared around the confused and panicking Vekthari fleet. They fired in perfect coordination, each ship targeting a specific enemy, according to a battle plan that had been rehearsed 1,000 times. The first volley destroyed over 500 Vekthari vessels. Overlord Kethvarak stared at his tactical display in horror. "How is this possible?" he whispered. He tried to rally his forces, to organize a counterattack, but his communications were jammed. His ships were scattered and confused. Every time a squadron formed up to fight, human vessels would concentrate, fire, and eliminate it. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula was the largest naval engagement in galactic history. It raged for 8 hours, with thousands of ships fighting across billions of kilometers of space. The Vekthari had numbers, but the humans had technology, planning, and the cold fury of a species that had waited 50 years for revenge. Captain Chloe Webb led a strike team of assault ships through the chaos of battle. Their target was the Dominion flagship, where Overlord Kethvarak commanded the enemy fleet. Intelligence had identified the ship's location, and Chloe intended to end the battle by capturing the enemy leader. Her ship punched through the flagship's shields, which had already been weakened by multiple torpedo hits. The boarding ramps deployed, and human soldiers poured into the Vekthari vessel. Chloe led from the front, her rifle cutting down every defender who stood in her way. The Vekthari fought hard, but they were outmatched. Human exosuits and superior training made the difference. Room by room, corridor by corridor, Chloe's team fought their way toward the bridge. When they finally broke through the last defense, Overlord Kethvarak was waiting with his personal guard. He was a massive Vekthari, taller and broader than any other, covered in ceremonial armor. He drew a blade that crackled with energy. "You will not take me alive, human," he snarled. Chloe shot him in the knee. He collapsed with a scream, and her soldiers swarmed over him before he could rise. Within seconds, the supreme commander of the Vekthari military was in chains. Back on the Vengeance, Admiral Hayes received the news with grim satisfaction. "Bring him to me," she ordered. The Overlord was dragged onto the bridge of the human flagship and thrown at her feet. He looked up at her with hatred and pain in his 4 eyes. Laura Hayes looked down at him and felt nothing but cold contempt. "50 years ago, your people destroyed my homeworld. You murdered 8 billion innocent human beings. You thought you had ended us." She leaned closer. "You were wrong. Your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is crumbling. And you will watch as everything you built is taken from you, piece by piece, until nothing remains but ashes and regret." She straightened and addressed her communications officer. "Broadcast our victory across all channels. Let the galaxy see what has happened here. Let them see the great Vekthari overlord in chains. Let them know that the Dominion has fallen." Across the nebula, the battle was ending. Of the 15,000 Vekthari ships that had entered, fewer than 300 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. It was the greatest military defeat in the history of the Dominion, and it was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the oppressed species of the galaxy began to rise. The Alori seized 3 Dominion worlds. The Kasith liberated their home system. The Mendari destroyed a Vekthari occupation force. Everywhere, the message spread. The Dominion can be defeated. The humans have shown us the way. A coalition formed, with humanity at its head. Ships from a dozen species joined the Terran fleet, adding their strength to the cause. What had started as a war of vengeance became a war of liberation. The hunters had become the hunted, and the tide had finally turned. The Vecthari Dominion fell faster than anyone had imagined. After the disaster at the Crimson Nebula, the Empire began to collapse from within. Military commanders who had once been feared across the galaxy now hesitated, uncertain, afraid. Colonial governors who had ruled with iron fists suddenly found their authority challenged. Species that had been crushed under Vecthari boots for generations rose up and demanded freedom. Strategic Commander Connor Blake coordinated the final campaign from the Bridge of the Vengeance. He was a quiet man with a brilliant mind for war, able to see patterns in chaos and find weakness in strength. Under his direction, human and allied forces carved through Vecthari space like a blade through flesh. World after world fell. The Dominion tried to mount defenses, but their forces were scattered and demoralized. Human technology continued to improve with each battle, while Vecthari weapons grew increasingly obsolete. The war that should have taken decades was over in 18 months. Now the human fleet hung in orbit over the Vecthari homeworld. Director Nathan Cole looked at the planet through the observation window of the transport ship that carried him down from orbit. He was 82 years old, tired and worn. But he had refused to miss this moment. This was what he had worked toward for 50 years. This was the culmination of everything. Below him, the cities of the Vecthari stretched across the continents. 20 billion beings lived on this world, the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries. They had watched the war unfold on their screens, seen their fleets destroyed and their colonies liberated. Now, human ships filled their sky, and they waited in terror for what would come next. They expected death. They expected fire from the heavens, just as they had given Earth 50 years ago. It was what they deserved. It was what justice demanded. But Nathan Cole had not come to deliver death. The transport landed in the central plaza of the capital city, surrounded by human soldiers in full combat gear. The streets were empty except for the terrified Vecthari, who watched from windows and doorways. Some knelt in surrender, some wept, some stared with hopeless resignation. Nathan stepped out of the transport, supported by a young aide. Behind him came the other leaders of humanity: Admiral Laura Hayes, Commander Chris Dalton, Strategic Commander Connor Blake, and dozens more. And behind them came the witnesses. They were old men and women, their hair white and their faces marked by age. They moved slowly, some needing help to walk, but their eyes were sharp and clear, and they carried themselves with a dignity that made even the Vecthari pause. These were the last survivors of Earth, the ones who had watched their world burn, the ones who had fled into the darkness and vowed to return. Many of their generation had died during the long years of exile, never seeing this day, but these few remained, and they had come to see the end. Nathan Cole approached a broadcasting station that had been set up in the plaza. His image would be transmitted to every corner of the planet, to every ship in orbit, to every world in the galaxy. When he spoke, everyone would hear. "People of the Vecthari Dominion," he said, his voice calm and steady despite his age. 52 years ago, your empire came to our world with fire and death. You destroyed our cities. You murdered our families. You killed 8 billion innocent human beings because we refused to submit to your rule. He paused, letting the words settle over his audience. We did not forget. We survived in the shadows, hiding among dead worlds and dying stars. We built our strength in secret. We waited for the day when we could return and collect what was owed. That day has come. He gestured at the ships filling the sky, at the soldiers surrounding the plaza, at the broken ruins of Vecthari military power. Your fleets are destroyed. Your colonies are liberated. Your government has fallen. Your empire is no more. We have taken everything from you, just as you took everything from us. The Vecthari listening expected the next words to be a death sentence. They braced themselves for the announcement of orbital bombardment, of extermination, of the end of their species. Nathan Cole smiled softly. But we will not become what you were. We will not commit genocide. We will not slaughter the helpless. We will not murder billions of innocent beings to satisfy our anger. He saw confusion on the alien faces around him. They did not understand. Because we are human, Nathan continued. And that is not who we are. You tried to destroy us. And in doing so, you created something you could never have imagined. You forced us to become strong, to become united, to become determined beyond anything you could comprehend. But you did not change what we are at our core. You did not turn us into monsters. He pointed at the survivors of Earth standing behind him. These men and women watched your ships burn their home. They lost parents, children, friends. They have every reason to want vengeance, to want your species erased from the galaxy, but they are here to witness something else. They are here to witness mercy. Nathan straightened despite his tired body. You will live. Your people will survive. But you will live knowing that the species you tried to exterminate brought you to your knees, and then chose to show you the compassion you never showed us. You will live knowing that humans are better than you ever were. That is your punishment. That is your lesson. Remember it. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, the members of the Galactic Council watched in their chambers. They were the leaders of the elder races, the ones who had stood by while Earth burned. They had done nothing to stop the Vectari. They had accepted human extinction as inevitable and moved on without a thought. Now, they saw humanity triumphant, merciful, and more powerful than they had ever imagined. They realized too late what this species truly was, not a weak young race to be dismissed, but a force that had reshaped the entire galaxy in a single generation. The Council issued a formal apology to humanity for their inaction 50 years ago. It meant nothing. Everyone knew that words could not make up for 8 billion lives. But humanity accepted the apology with grace, because that was who they chose to be. In the years that followed, humans helped rebuild what the Dominion had destroyed. They formed the Terran Compact, an alliance of free peoples committed to justice and mutual defense. Former Vectari worlds were given the choice to join or go their own way. Most chose to join. They had seen what humans could do as enemies. They wanted to see what humans could do as friends. Earth itself was reclaimed and restored. The scars of the bombardment were healed through decades of terraforming. New cities rose where the old ones had fallen. Humans returned to their homeworld, not as refugees but as victors. Old Megan Hartley was present when the first child was born on the restored Earth. She was 92 years old, the last of the original survivors, the last person alive who remembered the world before its destruction. She held the infant in her trembling arms and wept. This child would grow up under a blue sky, would breathe clean air, would know the peace that Megan's generation had fought so hard to create. Her brother Sam had not lived to see this day. He had died 10 years ago, old and content, knowing that humanity had survived. His ashes had been scattered among the stars, but his words lived on. We will remember, and we will return. They had remembered. They had returned. And now they had reclaimed their place among the stars. The galaxy would never forget the price of threatening mankind. No species would ever make that mistake again. Humanity had proven something that no other race had ever demonstrated so completely, that strength and mercy could exist together. That vengeance did not require becoming the enemy, that a broken people could rise from the ashes and build something greater than what was lost. The stars watched as the last survivor of old Earth passed the newborn to its mother. 2 generations, separated by fire and darkness, connected in a moment of pure hope. Humanity had come home, and this time, they were here to stay.